What if your next product decision started with a conversation? Not a conversation from a meeting, not from a deck, a conversation with the persona that you stitched together and brought to life. This episode asks, what happens when our creations finally talk back to us? Hi, I'm Nosipho, user experience research specialist at Dingy Studio and product strategist of AskSona, Dingy's interactive product persona. Today we're unpacking AskSona, how it works from a technical perspective, what makes it different from ChatGPT, and why conversational personas are changing how teams make decisions. Let's get started. Hey everyone, my name is Nosipho from Dingy Studios. I'm the UX researcher here on our team, and I am joined by Neil.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Cool. Thank you so much for joining. So today we'll be going through personas, which has been a hot topic at Dingy because we are working on our own persona product called AskSona. So today's episode will be focusing on designing personas you can talk to. So what does being able to talk to a persona look like versus the traditional personas? Nils, can you give us some insights into what you think the differences are?
Sure, yeah. So, we launched this short before the holiday break last year, so everything is still super fresh. Just keep that in mind. Like, we're still in basically public beta. Like, right now, you can just go to AskSona.io. We have like one public example. You don't even have to sign up to experience what it looks like. But you can also just go create an account, make your own personas. And I think like all of this is super exciting to me because, well, personas are this thing that everybody, there's always like, I think if you work for a specific profile of a person or you have someone in mind who is your customer or who's your I don't know, someone who you're trying to optimize your communication for, I think everybody has this question in one capacity or the other. And for me, personas never worked. And that's also, what you reflected back to me last year when we were talking about it on the podcast, that personas, everybody wants to imagine this other person as best as possible and trying to step into their shoes and understand what they think and what the thought process is and stuff like that. But personas usually used to be this just a static PowerPoint slide or something like that. And I know that my imagination just always ran dry super quickly. There was like there's this
Yeah.
photo, right? And so and then we talked about, hey, let's first of all, let's get off this PowerPoint canvas or whatever, like a static canvas where you just draw up these boxes and say, this is the photo of the person and this is the name and they're like between whatever, 25 and 30 and they like this and that and they're more expensive or they go shopping a lot or they are politically left-wing or anything that you want to express about your right? And then you read it once and you're like, yeah, okay, sure, I can imagine this person. But then it always stopped, right? And then last minute, when we were building AskSona, we had this idea that it would be awesome to just be able to chat with this person as you maybe did now since the dawn of ChatGPT and stuff like that, right? Like where you suddenly have a natural conversation with a computer and you sort of forget that it's not a real person. And so this feature alone makes this whole product for me super exciting because I can read all of the stuff, right? Like it looks like a persona always did. But now there's just a chat window. I can just say hi. And the persona says hi. And then ask like a whole lot of questions and do that for however long I want. And I don't even have to, I can even ask questions where I might be a little bit hesitant when I have like an actual customer in front of me. Like if I wanted to say, how price sensitive are you? Like that's sort of a direct question, but now I can ask this question and would see how somebody reacts. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And if we think about technically what happens at the back end, because traditionally we're kind of the back end where we have to assume what happens. We have to make the story and imagine this persona and what this persona would say, what this persona would think. But in this case, we're able to access what they actually might think, and that's information that's being fed to us. So just technically, can you give us some information as to where does this information come from? How do we feed it into the persona? And how does it technically differentiate from a traditional static persona?
Cool, yeah. So what we're doing now is I think this idea really started with our friend Chris Silvestri and the podcast episode where we talked about um, synthetic user research in the broader sense, right? Like his thesis was like, look, um, synthetic users are not going to replace research with actual people, right? Like we're still building computer software and interfaces in general for actual humans. But he made the point where you usually take more than one round to hone into something with your target group, right? Like you're doing desk research and then you have something to show for, and then you do like a first usability test and have them scroll through something, and there's like multiple rounds. And for every interaction with actual humans, I mean, you have to plan, you have to schedule, like if they're not on your team, which they're ideally not because probably your target persona doesn't work at your company, then you have to find these people somewhere and maybe pay for them. And yeah. And he made the point of that in his experience, setting up a ChatGPT project or a Gemini project, or like adding some context of what you know about the person that you're trying to talk to on an LLM can already be super helpful to just take like this first level of validation. You know, like if you write an email and you're wondering, should I write like a long form email, like with a lot of, you know, like being very nice and very emotional, or is this rather the type that doesn't like these long form emails and just wants an email saying, hi, John, we're doing this week the following 5 points. Peace out, Niels, you know, like, so how do you know? And you can do this with headlines on websites and like with anything that you want an opinion on. And so that this is, and he said, like, I can just set that up on ChatGPT and this is helpful already. So inspired by this, what we're doing right now, and I think we have plans for the future to make this even better, but what we're doing right now is, so we have all of the persona information in the database. So like the whole profile, like name and interests and media channels and a typical daily schedule and brands they like and they don't like and like all these things, right? So we have all of that. And because we have all of that on record, we can use this specific ChatGPT model that's called ChatGPT Chat, which is like a just fine-tuned to be more of like a, you know, like a conversational type of AI. So it's just a little bit nicer to talk to and it's a little bit quicker. But so basically what we're doing now is as if you were starting a new chat with a whole bunch of documents describing a person and say with a prompt like, pretend to be the person that I'm describing in all of these documents and let's have a chat. So this is essentially what we're doing right now. And the knowledge therefore comes from, well, the context that you provide in the documents that you upload. So the more accurate your persona is on AskSona, or the more fleshed out, like if you fill all the boxes, then the persona that you talk to will be much more like the persona that you're imagining from the tiles, right? And then the rest is really, well, all knowledge of humanity that's encompassed in ChatGPT. So, yeah, it's a wild mix of stuff that we use to have the chat right now.
Hmm. And something that was really important that you mentioned is that you're able to feed in documents about your user. And just to cover that from a UX research basis, or just the general researcher in your team, or the person who's able to get insights from your user, whether it's your marketeer, or it's someone who's at the call center, or it's the founder who might have in-depth information about the target audience. The way in which we do it is that we begin with in-depth interviews about the target audience. So here's where we get to understand what their beliefs are, what their lifestyle looks like, what are some prominent questions that we're trying to understand. And that should be overarching during the curation of this persona. So taking all of that into account, all the data that we're able to find, something cool that Niels also does is that during interviews, just general chats with the target audience, whether it's a once-off call or it's a sales call, he's able to take that documentation and feed it right into the persona. So this ensures that, one, the persona is research driven. Number two, it's constantly updated with the new information that you're receiving about your actual client or your target audience. So I think that's something that's really cool that our Sona is able to do, that you have these personas that are research driven from actual data that comes from your own business, and you're able to feed that in, as well as have the conversation based off of the information that you already have.
And this, like, I mean, when you say it like this, I was just listening, was like trying to remember what the process was to make a persona before we had this, right? I mean, this is essentially actually where this came from, right? Like, this was usually you doing that inside
Yeah, I
Dingy.
hated
Like,
it. I hated it. Niels and I had a series of why personas suck because of how much I hated it. Because
yes,
you have the static piece of paper and you have to imagine this target audience's life. You can never bounce off ideas with them. You can never sanity check. You can never check a line of copy. You can never ideate over a marketing campaign. It's not something that you can interact with. And that's what really gave birth to our Sona, that we wanted something that when you don't have the target audience on deck, you're able to quickly sanity check something based on real information that you've already fed into it. Of course, this doesn't replace the actual user, but it is a tool to help you get a little bit closer to your actual user.
yeah. And that's an excellent point. Like, I remember when I showed you the first version of this chat, like just when it was working, and you said, wow, this is super cool. And I think shortly after, you said something like, hey, so can I use this to, well, usability test? And then we talked about it a little bit because, I mean, usability testing usually involves you have something to show, like a prototype or an actual website or whatever, right? And the test participant shares their screen and you watch them do it and you listen to what they say, right? Like, you usually encourage them to just sort of speak their thoughts while they're doing it. And then you can probe a little bit if they stumble and so on. And so, like, this whole thing is not yet fully possible. But what is possible, and that was just like a really small feature to add, really, is that before we just had an input box, like a regular chat message box that you can just type into and hit send. But now there's also like a little file upload button. So what we do often before we, I don't know, if we make a website, for example, then just before we jump into design or even wireframing, we usually have like just like a document, like a text document, just like a Word doc or whatever, that describes what the page will be, like the story arc of the page. And now if you have this, and this works super well, you can just upload that into the chat and literally ask the persona, imagine this is a website you're browsing, what do you think? And the feedback coming out of that was a little bit mind-blowing to me because I didn't think there was something meaningful coming out of there. But this is awesome. And also a thing that ChatGPT, the chat model, does that we're using at the moment. Like we're exploring different models and different LLMs in general and so on. But what this one does also is that since it, and the system prompt too, like that we're telling it, like, look, don't get out of character. You're this persona. Act as if you were this person. And I mean, the person has a name and everything. So they give you a hard time. Like, usually with AI, right? Like, I think many people talked about this online already, that if you're just on ChatGPT, it's like usually it's trying to be this people pleaser experience, right? Like it always says yes and oh, and of course you're right, and what a great idea. Let me do that right away. The personas are not like that. If you show them something they don't like, they will tell you. And this was a very interesting experience because you sort of forget, like if you just use LLMs like that, and they, they just always say yes. And sometimes you're like, yeah, okay, so I know
Yeah.
you're just saying yes, right? But this way, this is really different. And I thought that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. With the example that we used, we had our group of personas, which are about 4 or 5 personas, and I put together a quick document that I just wanted to sanity check and usability test. And I gave this document to each of my personas. Each of them had different reasons as to why they liked something and they didn't like something. And it really helped me shape a really full picture around the thing that we're designing at the moment. So yeah, it's super interesting to usability
Yeah.
test with AskSona, and it's super intriguing to get some pushback about ideas that you might have.
Yeah. And it's really, I think, for this first, like, I mean, you don't even have to upload a document. Like, let's say you're just working on improving the headline on the stage of a website right now. Like, that's your goal. Like, you're trying to see if it does anything for, like, in your tracking over the next weeks or something like that. And you can just have your persona open on the one side or multiple ones, actually, as you said, right? Like usually you have like a couple different ones for a project, and you just have them open in tabs and you just copy paste in like your headline or maybe even the sub headline and a call to action. And you can just do this all day long. And I think this is super powerful in itself, just for this first round of ideation where you're still exploring, right? And as opposed to the real life version of this, where usually you don't have access to this person all day long. Like, I mean, they're taking time out of their calendar, and usually you just get this half an hour, right? And then, like, you have like 20 minutes effective talking time, and but there's no real way to ideate in this during this, right? Like, you have one shot. You ask them, they give you feedback, and they're like, yeah, okay, back to the drawing board. And so I think it's super powerful that you can just have them all day long and keep the context and just go until you feel ready enough to actually talk to a person and not waste their time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many times that I've gotten into usability tests. I've asked my questions, I've stuck to my script, and I've left and I was like, I wish I had said this or I had asked this. So having our Sona, you're able to take a breather, go walk around, make a coffee, and come back and continue the conversation in your own time.
Exactly. And I think one of the ideas for the future that I think is gonna be that I'm really excited for. Let's say it this way. Like, let's see what comes out of it. But
Yeah.
so currently, you can like you have just one persona open in the browser, and then you can have like the other ones in other tabs. Like, but you have them side by side, and they don't know of each other, so to say. And oftentimes, like we're an agency, like we have many different clients and many different projects, right? And we're working in this industry, in that industry. And so just for this, be able to quickly set up a persona and then fine tune them over time just gets us ramped up on a project much quicker, just because we can, like understand a little bit how automotive industry is different from music events and just, like get a feel for it. That's cool. But websites always have this problem that, well, you have one website, but probably 3 to 4 different personas you're looking to satisfy with this website, right? And so it's interesting to ask them one by one, sure, and that's absolutely valuable already. But wouldn't it be cool if you could stick them in one room to have a conversation with all of them at the same time, right? So
Uh-huh.
what we're doing now with a little bit of work, you can just set that up on by yourself on a ChatGPT project. Like it's actually, I think you can with a little bit of work, like have your material ready and have like a good system prompt to just say like this is how you're supposed to behave, to just have it made ready for you and always available, and you know that you're talking to this person. That's cool. But now, if we could stick like 3 to 4, 5 in one room and literally have a group chat with them where they also, can critique each other and be like, what really? I thought that was an actual really good idea and so on. And I just want to see what comes out of that, because I think that would make it so much more dynamic, and you can have like a virtual panel discussion with your
Yeah,
target group.
that's great.
So, yeah.
That'd be really cool. That'd be really cool. So you mentioned that the current LLM that we use is ChatGPT chat. And what is the difference between just using ChatGPT, like creating a project of your persona, versus AskSona specifically?
Yes, so I think that's even something that maybe any of you might have experienced yourself since the dawn of ChatGPT. What now, 4 years ago almost? So the first versions of ChatGPT, but also Claude and the first versions of Gemini as well, um, they were much more natural out of the box. Like if you just started a chat with ChatGPT 3 years ago, then the experience, the way that it talks back to you would be much more as if there was another human. So, and I think this was because they really wanted to prove that this is possible now. I mean, this was like the technological breakthrough, that you have something that can actually sort of understand what you're saying. Like, I don't want to be the guy that says it's just statistics, but so like the impression that it left is that you actually talk to a person. And by now, ChatGPT 5.1.2, like Gemini, the latest Claude Opus models, all of these recent models that came out in the last couple of months, the focus changed a lot. So what companies do now is that because it's so massively expensive to create one of these new models that are even bigger than the ones before, what they do now is that they have one general purpose model. And this is, if you just use ChatGPT, that's what you get. Like you talk to the general purpose model. But they use this model to make more specific ones. And so ChatGPT Chat, for example, is a specifically made version that feels a lot more like the models used to feel like 3 years ago. Like it's much more conversational. And there's another one. There's, for example, ChatGPT Codex, which is also based on the big generic model, but is made for programming. And you're not gonna chat with your LLM to have a nice conversation, but you want it to focus on being efficient with solving programming tasks. So, and I think this is where in the future we're gonna see much, much more specific use cases, and that we're going to improve a lot with AskSona as well. Like currently we're using the chat model from ChatGPT, but we're also, as I said, exploring other models, smaller models, quicker models. At some point, we'd like to offer the option that you use a model that is in your own infrastructure, so you don't have to worry about your employees leaking sensitive information. Maybe somebody actually copy pastes some personal information like a name and an email address, and you usually don't want that to go to ChatGPT on their servers. So there's in this realm, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for the future. And yeah, for now, We're using the chat model, which is just generally not available in the standard UI of ChatGPT.
Awesome, awesome. I think I really also, from the user's perspective, something that's really cool about AskSona is that you don't have prompt creation overhead. I know for myself, like I really suck at crafting a good prompt that gets me the results that I want. But with Asona, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about re-prompting or starting a new chat because the context doesn't work for you anymore. It's all there. It's all conducive, and you are removed from the overhead of trying to think of how best do I communicate what's in my head to craft this persona.
Totally. And I mean, that counts also for update or like creating your persona initially. Like you can do that with an AI prompt. Like, and you can just say something like all the way from, hey, please make me a dummy persona who's like a cool surfer guy living in California or whatever. Like you can do that and it will create just out of thin air an entire persona just so like it fills all the boxes and it invents everything that you didn't tell it, right? All the way to what we're doing if the customers get this from us, like to create a persona is that, and this is what you do, right? Like it interviews, discovery research, all of the documents to actually understand what's happening and then use like a mixed approach of AI and manual work to actually create the persona. And this is much more precise, of course. But you, as like, even if you create your own personas and you're not a UX research specialist, then you can still rely on the fact that we do everything under the hood to enhance your persona creation with our expert knowledge as much as possible. So when you go in and say, hey, look, I have 3 interview transcripts of customers of my store, and like, as you said, like sometimes we're all a little bit too impatient or just also don't really know how to craft the perfect prompt. So you might go ahead and do something like, I'm providing you with like 3 interview transcripts and I talk to customers of my dog accessory online platform shop thing. Please make a persona out of it, right? Then you would do something much more elaborate. But the system takes this prompt and enhances it under the hood to really make sure that we're creating the best version for it to make a persona. And I think this is something that you're benefiting by using AskSona, because all of this knowledge that we gathered over many years by now is just baked into the system and is continuously updated, of course.
Yeah, and I think it's much easier starting with an illusion of what your persona could look like as opposed to a blank piece of paper. Because from this illusion, you're able to change and fix things that are incorrect, that aren't accurate, into something that works for your business.
Totally. And for me, like, I mean, we made this now, so might have a slight bias. But anyway, for me, this is the first time that I actually use personas. I gotta say, like, it's before, you know, I didn't. Just because, like, you saw the PDF. Maybe you even put it dead center on your desktop and you're supposed to look at it. And then you open it and you close it after 2 seconds and you're like, yeah, yeah, I know that. And then you go about your day because you got his stuff to do. So, but now I really have this habit of just having a couple personas open in tabs and just flip over and be like, oh yeah, that's true. And maybe pop in a question to the chat. And that's just, yeah, I have to say, like, this is really in this whole paradigm shifting AI tech bubble that we're in. There's a couple things that really changed the way I work, and having these available to me is actually one of those parts by now. So, yeah, to just be able to iteratively work on something is just cool. Yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome. Cool. Thank
totally.
you so much, Niels, for this conversation. It was super, super
Yeah,
insightful. It was great going over why a persona that you're able to speak to is so different from interacting with just a normal traditional persona. And yeah, can't wait to have our next conversation.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. It was really nice. And I'm looking forward to future developments in this area. Yeah. I think it's going to be cool. All right.
If you like what we were speaking about, you can find it at AskSona.io. For now, see you next time. Bye.